Greetings, my friends. Do you have pesky necromancers or annoying archaeologists disrupting the natural cycle of life and death near your grove? I'm Grogari, Archdruid of the Witherbloom Forest, and I'm here to tell you help is on the way. For a very reasonable all-green, all-natural mana investment, you can summon Froghemoth. It's fast, it's hungry, it's a little bit scary, but it will put a stop to the unsavories digging around where they shouldn't.
Tristan Eriks here, fashionable weapons merchant and traveling purveyor of all things strange and magical. I'm a discerning sort, one that likes to be sure of the safety of both my kin and my goods. In these strange lands, you can never be too careful. That's why, no matter where I travel, I always carry with me my trusty portable hole. It's perfect to lay down at the doorway of my tent to make sure none of my more unsavory customers make off with any of the goods, and even better to make sure they can't come back in if they have any problems. I only do that with the more affluent ones though, but they deserve it, I suppose. It's always been a hit with tavern owners too. If a drunkard starts a scuffle, just pop them in the hole and let them out in a field to walk it off. It's a high quality item. The more use and wear it gets, the bigger it becomes. It truly is the best item in my possession. Well, the best item that isn't one of my wonderful weapons, of course. I wouldn't leave my tent without it. Just don't store it in your bag of holding. It's not wise to open a rift to the astral plane or void your warranty.
Oh no!
Hey, oh no!
We just started this campaign and we've already lost it.
Oh no!
We've already lost a
She
player.
went to the portable hole.
Who left the portable hole out?
Hey, folks! I'm Chris, and I'm your commander mechanic, and welcome to the Adventures in the Forgotten Realms Roundtable. I am joined by an esteemed panel of my friends and colleagues, and we're here to talk everything D&D, Magic the Gathering, and Commander. Before we kick off, I want to remind everybody that we are taking donations for Child's Play tonight, and every donation that you make, every increment of $5 within that donation enters you into a raffle to win some pretty sweet prizes. Everything from dice sets to character journals or dragon shield sleeves, dice towers and trays, augmented reality pins, and if we break the $200 donation mark, we'll be adding in D&D Beyond digital source books as well. And if we crack the $300 donation mark, we'll be adding in your choice of Adventures in the Forgotten Realms Commander Precon decks too. So make sure to check out the link in chat and donate along the way. All right, so getting ready to kick off and introduce our panel. As a forever DM, I have one question for everybody, or one request of everybody. Please roll for initiative.
What's our modifier? What class are we playing?
Let's go straight. No modifiers.
No modifiers?
Ooh, 15 for me.
All right.
11. 17.
I got a 6.
Okay. Oh, I'm not last. I got a 7.
Okay. So Michelle. So Jake was 15.
Yep.
Rachel, Clay, and Alan. All right. Phenomenal. So first in initiative order is Michelle. Michelle, why don't you let us know where you're from and what you do?
Hi, so I'm a level 17 barbarian, and just joking, it's fine. I'm going to use my bonus action to rage. So, hi, I'm Michelle Rapp. I'm not a barbarian. I'm, in fact, a basic vanilla human here. Yes, thank you for pulling up the barbarian class. I am a content creator, also a forever dungeon manager. I do quite a few campaigns and things like that with Loading Ready Run. I also occasionally do charity campaigns with Utopia, as well as Friends Who Roll Dice. I'm known within the Magic community for mostly being Vorthos, aka a Magic story lore person. So I used to have we're currently on hiatus, a podcast called The Lore Turquoise, where we examine magic story. And I also write like occasional lore and character analyses articles for Card Kingdom. So I'm also a ceramicist. If you want to know what I make out of the clay, you can check out my work at kilnfiendpottery.com.
And as we learned earlier, a polyglot as well.
A little bit. It's all just like a polyglot bucket, and so we've talked about this. Like we start off in French, and then like I'm on Arabic, and it's like what happened there.
Fantastic. Jake, welcome. Why don't you let everybody know where we can find you and what you do?
Yeah, hey, it's Casual Jake, and I am a level 2 because I just finished my second year. I'm going to my second year of teaching Bard. I'm a music teacher, but what I do in regards to Magic is I'm a content creator. I play casual EDH over on my Twitch channel. I stream MTG Arena, and I just got into Pauper. Yes, 60 card Pauper format, Legacy Light, a lot of fun. So if you want to follow my adventures and see what I'm getting into, you can always follow my Twitch, casual_Jake_. And hit me up on Twitter. That's kind of the easiest way to see what's going on with me.
Phenomenal. Welcome. Rachel.
Hi, everybody. A lot of people know me best from Twitter. My name is Rachel Reeks on Twitter, but I am a member of the Commander Advisory Group. And I am also one of the co-hosts of the Comedy Commander podcast, The Commander Sphere, with my co-host Dan Sheehan. So that's real weird and fun, but I also play live D&D, so this is the perfect set for me. I play every Monday at 7 p.m. Pacific with a group of comedians, and that show is called Better Than Heroes.
Fantastic. Clay, almost no introduction needed.
It's probably best that there's just like a tiny one. Hi, I'm Clay or Claybee. I am the CNCPowerHour representative on the round table. So what we do here, we're kind of a variety channel, but we stream Magic primarily, mostly virtual EDH. Primarily virtual EDH now that I've moved away, but we do typically Wednesday evenings and Sunday afternoons, and we have a lot of fun. Otherwise, you can find me on Twitter at MTG_Claybee, where I post pictures of my animals and complain about work. and fun Magic cards. That's about most of my social media presence.
Awesome. And last in turn order is Alan. Alan, who are you? Where can we find you?
What's up, guys? Ramp Gang, Mental Misplay. You know the vibe. Came here to party.
Oh, no.
What happened?
I can't hear Alan.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
I can hear Alan.
All right.
All right.
One
but I think
moment,
the audience can hear you, Alan, if you want to go ahead with your intro.
Cool. So I stream competitive and I guess casual, whatever the monikers are these days. I stream all sorts of EDH on the Twitch channel, twitch.tv/mental_misplay. But I guess I'm primarily known for streaming cEDH and doing charitable-based streams. And then we take them and jam them into YouTube videos, and they're really, we stuff them full of memes, and they're really kind of chaotic. It's a whole experience. And I've dabbled in a little bit of tabletop role playing, and my big kind of tie with this set is that I've kind of grown up reading the Companions of the Hall books, so they're like family to me. So this is this set's like big for me. I don't know.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think for just about everybody, this set scratches a little bit of an itch, whether you've got some experience with D&D or not. It's really interesting to see. Everybody with some experience in D&D, raise your hands real quick. I mean, I know that we've had a couple of us. So it seems that we've got some varying levels of experience here, with some people playing D&D and some not. But I think that we all, of course, play Magic here. So my first question for the panel, what overlaps are you really finding between the game of Dungeons and Dragons and the game of Magic here? Has the set really encapsulated what D&D is, or is it just a little bit of a teaser? Why don't we start with Rachel on this one? Rachel, what do you think overall?
Sure. I don't think we're really capturing the essence of role playing with the game, but I do like that that you sort of apply the fun tension building parts of D&D to Magic. I think some people may not like the set as much because there is so much dice rolling and there is a lot more added luck involved. But I think that kind of tension that you borrow from D&D, just of like rolling to see if you get what you need to get. I've already had moments in Limited with this set where it's like, okay, if I roll above a 10, I can kill my opponent, and if I do not, I cannot. So it's I think it's fun that you get to, like, there's a chance that you miss and there's a chance that your character misses. So it's kind of a fun variety, I guess.
Awesome. Michelle, what do you think with your experience in Magic and D&D? Do you think it captures some of that feeling?
I mean, I think inherently what I love about Magic and what I love about it's sort of almost the same thing that I like about D&D, and it's the ability to kind of tell your own story. So in Magic, so we all know that the origins of Magic: The Gathering is a game that we play between D&D sessions, and I think the heart of any role-playing game is about it's about empathizing with another person you've created and being able to tell their story, and the dice of course add that element of chaos. The thing about Magic: The Gathering is that we don't really have the opportunity to directly tell that story. But on the other hand, we do get an opportunity to express ourselves and an aspect of ourselves through our play style. And that's what I really enjoy about the game Magic: The Gathering. There's so many different ways to play, not just formats, but also like within the formats, you've got, blue-white control, you've got like blue-green Simic nonsense, which is just everywhere in Commander now. But like I said, like there's just a lot of different ways for you to express yourself, and I think that's what's really nice about both games, and I think that's where they overlap.
Awesome. I couldn't agree more. I think that there's a lot of potential for self-expression within the set, and especially with the format of Commander, since Commander is one of the formats where you can really show yourself through your deck and your gameplay. So I think that's a big overlap in the two. Jake, looks like you agree with that too.
Yeah, I was just going to add there that one of the elements that I saw that maybe isn't necessarily introduced with this set, but a big crossover that I loved, a big element of D&D and a big element of specifically EDH that I enjoyed, is some of the cooperative efforts that you get. There's been plenty of times in a game of Commander where one person pulls ahead, sometimes super early, and they're just running away with the game, and you have to look at your would-be opponent and say, okay, guess what? We're part of a team now, and we need to figure this out. So you come up with ways to help each other, and just similar to D&D, your strengths might be different than someone else's strength. You might be packing the removal, and they can protect that with their counter magic. Kind of like, maybe I'll be the warrior or is that a class in D&D? I don't know. Correct me, but I'm the barbarian that goes. I'm the fighter. I'm the fighter. I'm going to go in, and you can support me as a cleric, or something like that. So there's different ways. The social aspect is what I really enjoyed about both games.
Awesome. That's fantastic, and a fantastic point too. Now, Clay, as somebody with not yet experience in D&D, you come with a unique perspective here because you might have notions of what D&D is, but are very familiar with Magic. How do you feel the set crosses over with what you understand about D&D?
Yeah, so like I guess I realized even as I was sitting and listening that like to say I have no experience is kind of lying, because I've consumed a bunch of D&D content through podcasts and stuff. So like now I have at least, some understanding of how D&D works and like the classes and the spells and like a bunch of that stuff, right? But I have not done that myself. So like for me with this set, I think the most interesting overlap, I guess, is kind of getting a better understanding for references that are made throughout pop culture and like medias, right? That I did not previously recognize as a D&D thing. Like something comes out and then, and then in a video game, I play a video game and I'm like, okay, this game is really neat. And I like this character. I like this concept. And then, it originally came from D&D. I just never knew that, right? And so like there's a lot of these pieces that have been kind of fun troves, and like thanks I wouldn't have known them without Twitter. Like luckily a bunch of my friends on Twitter are big D&D fans, so like a card comes out and they're like, holy shit, and then here's like an 8-tweet thing, right, about that card, about that
Thank you,
item
Shiva.
or thing.
Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. exactly.
I didn't want to like just single out Shiva, but like Shiva was the best example of that, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, so it's been very neat to see. Magic wise, I don't know that the set really has like scratched any itches for me, but but as far as like the lore and the mechanics behind it, it's been a really cool thing to kind of see fleshed out and see so many people excited about.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you mentioned the tropey nature of it, which is something that we'll touch on in a second. But I really want to get into that too. But first, Alan, with your experience with some of the lore around D&D and your immersion with that, do you think that the set captures that for you? Does it scratch that itch?
I think there are parts of it that really did, and parts of it that I think fell a little flat just for, me getting my hopes up of like, like when they make a movie of the book you read or whatever, like there's always going to be elements that are missing or elements that are there. I think as far as what you would originally ask, like what kind of translates over, I think there's like, not specifically with this set, but inherently there's a communal aspect of specifically D&D and Commander that kind of go together, like that it's something you're doing with your friends, and like even after the activity is done, it's something you'll talk about when like later on, oh, do you remember when you did the X, or when I played the whatever the spell is? So that's something that I find really goes hand in hand, so it makes it really easy to translate that.
Absolutely. Michelle, something to add?
Yeah, no, I think I agree with like the interconnectivity between the social aspects of D&D and the social aspects of Commander. It's really interesting too, because I don't know if you've ever read the Reddit subforum, RPG horror stories, but it's what's interesting about both of these games is that when you introduce a social aspect, you take the good with the bad. And so I think one of the challenges in both areas is just communication, understanding. And I mean, that's why I'm really grateful to Rachel and everybody else on the CAG and the RC for doing a good job of trying to keep a level playing field and keep some of the basic rules around. So that way, we as humans can better social good when we play. I don't know if we're ever going to need to get like a player's handbook sized thing for EDH, but like, I don't know. Maybe that's what we need. Right.
And I think that you touched on something important there regarding the overlap in the social elements here, but also the good social elements as opposed to some of the bickering and some of the negative social elements as well. I've always found that Commander players and D&D players will never hesitate to share their favorite things with you. Nobody will hesitate to tell you about their favorite Commander deck, and nobody will hesitate to tell you about their favorite PC either. So that's a big overlap too, in that there's a personal investment from people in both D&D and Magic that I think really hits a core. Alan, it looks like you're on the same page with that.
Oh, no, absolutely. It's specifically about, like I find myself doing it all the time, like, telling people about like a crazy play that I had in a game, or like whatever spicy play that happened to happen. And yeah, it translates very, very easily. And I see a lot of that with people telling stories about their role-playing experiences as well.
Yeah, how the game extends beyond the game. Everybody has those stories. I think that's entirely fair. Rachel, any experience with that too?
I'm not sure how if this relates, but it made me think of it. I kind of love how Commander, you sort of have this player character, right? Like you have that you're like, this is my guy. How can I build a story and like both a backstory and a future story for this this character I've selected and I've built. And so when you choose like a legendary creature, it tells you a little bit about who they are, but you really get to decide what kind of flavor that character takes on, or what kind of flavor that Commander takes on. So it is very interesting. I guess I hadn't thought about it in terms of like building a Commander deck is very much like playing out an RPG, D&D.
Yeah,
Sorry.
right.
Brain is
You
slow
can-
today.
No worries.
No problem. You can make a commander and two people can have completely different 99s, just like
Yeah.
you can build a level 6 ranger and have two completely different characters. Right.
Mhm.
Michelle?
Oh yeah, no, I was about to say like I think I forget who, Rachel, you might remember, or anybody else might remember, but I think somebody said on Twitter that there are a couple different kinds of commander players. And I think the kind that we're talking about right now is definitely more of the spectacle and story-minded commander player. Like for example,
I believe that was Kristen Emily's article.
Yeah,
about
yeah, it was a fantastic article, and I thought it was a beautiful way of, I guess, analyzing in a very sociological perspective the demographic of commander players, which I felt was extremely accurate and well done. But yeah, whenever I like to joke, like whenever I play commander, it feels a lot like a WWE match. Like I've got my kittens with mittens, and I'm just gonna come in with a bunch of cats, gonna put swords on them and throw them at people. Like it's sort of that level of ridiculousness, and I think that that's what's fun about D&D is that you can act out that kind of ridiculousness too. Like I cast magic missile, like boom, it's your face.
Exactly. Jake, how do you feel the social elements between the two overlap or not?
Yeah, so of course there's some differences when you look at the game Magic. It's generally the object of the game is to come out on top, right? You're trying to not necessarily, but there's nuances, of course, there. But the game at its core is there's going to be a winner, and in D&D that's not always the case, right? The idea is you want everyone to win by hopefully not dying. And you're talking about stories. I have one of those stories where I had a friend almost died like the first day we played D&D, and it was like, what is this? And so I think there's some different dynamics there, but I think as other people have touched on, those stories, those post-game memories are the things that really bind them together, whether, like I said, it's an adversarial more competitive game or a cooperative game like D&D. You're going to have those times where you're outside of the game and you're kind of thinking back on it very fondly.
Absolutely. Before we get to your next,
sorry, before we move on, my co-host put together a thing where he said that there's two different kinds of commander players. There's racehorses and show ponies, and I love
sign me up for dressage.
Exactly.
Just
if a dressage horse shows up to a race, it's going to be embarrassing. And if a racehorse shows up to a dressage event, they don't understand what's happening either. So it's I really like the idea that this set specifically sort of speaks to the show pony EDH players specifically.
Absolutely. And the same can be said for D&D as well. If somebody shows up to sit down at a table of min-maxers and one person is there making a completely flavorful role-play designed character, then you know that there's going to be an odd person out that's not going to be having the same time, right?
Absolutely.
So I like that analogy.
That just reminded me real quick of one of the first times my girlfriend played D&D, just talking about expectations and whatnot. When we started, we did a Ravnica themed what's it called, campaign, which was great because my girlfriend's really into Magic, wasn't into D&D, so this was gonna be the crossover. And where I mistook my mistake was, it was a group with my determined college friends, and so for us the object of the game was a lot of catching up to do, right? Because it was virtual, it was in the height of COVID, so we spent a lot of time catching up and cracking inside jokes where she was there to learn how to play D&D, and it was really unfair to her. You're right, I know it stinks, and I have apologized vigorously for it because she's sitting there wanting yearning to learn about this game that I talk so highly about, and me and my buddies are kind of just riffing and talking about the good old days, and so you have to much like a rule zero. I think D&D needs to have, I think they call it a
Session zero.
Session
I-
zero.
Right, so
Yep.
there's some similarities there.
Yeah.
Michelle can speak
Yep.
to.
I always run a session zero is I think one of the best things to ever hit society as a whole. And I think that more games, honestly, like I've said it before and I'll say it again. I think Commander needs needs like a session zero. You need like sit down and figure out like, and that's how we can determine power levels. But a session zero is so important. It's not only just to get all of your players on the same table, just on the same page with regards to what their expectations are, but also just boundaries. And I think that that's something that where D&D and RPGs in general, where we start departing a little bit from Commander and Magic. Magic, there's established rules, etc. We have judges, but we're never going to turn and kind of go into areas that will make people truly uncomfortable. For example, discussing issues of trauma or possible other issues like that. And so, that's why in the RPG world, Kiana, one of my co-hosts from Asians Represent, like she created the TTRPG safety toolkit. And it's efforts like this that help keep people safe and actually do a lot to help marginalized folks feel safe within their space and allow themselves to have fun, because there isn't a spoken, clear, explicit line in the sand of what we're going to cover, what we're not going to cover. This is how you tell me it's not okay. And I'm going to make sure that in my role as a game master or game manager, whatever, that I'm going to make sure that all of you feel safe, feel included, and have fun, for whatever definition of fun that is that we've decided on. So it's incredibly important. I can't, basically, like, if you're going to go into a game, I'm just going to say this for everyone, like, don't do it without a session zero. And it's always worth having another session zero midway through just to check in and be like, hey, are we still having fun? Have we covered anything? What did you like? What did you not like? Because this D&D and RPGs are collaborative storytelling. And we can't tell stories if we're not having fun.
Absolutely. All right. So before we get to our next question, I want to remind everybody in chat that we are going to be doing some Q&A at the end as well. So if you do have any questions that pop up throughout the roundtable, please redeem the highlight message in chat so that we can keep track of it and we can ask these questions at the end. We are going to be going around and answering your questions and requests. All right. So next up, Clay, you touched on some of the tropes behind D&D and how they're represented in the AFR set here. I'm really interested to explore what you feel is represented and how representative it is. And I'd like the rest of the panel's input on maybe what cards best represent or least represent their equivalents in D&D as well. How does that translate between the two different game systems here? So Clay, why don't we start? You said that you've had experience with and exposure to the tropes of D&D, if not experiencing them yourselves. How does that come through in this set?
So like it's fitting that we've still got the fighter class card up there, right? Because I think that the classes are again, from my limited content consumption, these feel like the best, most flavorful representations for D&D and Magic. Like I think all of them, even if the individual effects aren't necessarily super representative of what that class does in D&D overall, though, just the flavor, the feel, it gets stronger over time. By the end, each of them, you get to level 3 and each of them is like really good and has a serious impact on the game. Stuff like that's really, really neat. And then I think the other thing is just actually, we've talked about it already, but using dice rolling to have an impact, introducing another level of variance beyond heads or tails and jaw play, right? Like for the most part, outside of like shuffling your deck, in Magic, typically players try to reduce the variance as much as possible, and so having a set that has so many cards that revolve around rolling a d20, and you might get you have, like the deck of many things is a good example. You have 4 different possibilities when you do that. So like it creates that same feeling that I get when I listen to a podcast, right? And they're like, the dungeon manager's like, hey, perception check, and they're like 3, and they're like, you've lost your butt. Like there's these levels of like, I'm a confident like elf ranger who like on a good day could see a half mile, but man, I just like this roll stunk, and so like we're lost. So like I feel like from the outside that feels like the biggest hit.
Yeah.
And then I guess also the emphasis on treasure.
Right. Awesome.
Deeply
ahead.
upsetting. There's no card called Loot the Body.
I'm also
that would
deeply.
have been that one.
I'm also deeply upset that there is not a Tensor's Floating Disc because that spell was created specifically to carry loot.
To carry a loot,
So,
yeah, absolutely.
It's so good.
Jake, you had something to add?
Yeah, so again, this is from a general player. I've done a little bit of DMing, just like I said, casual with some friends, just doing stuff. But one of the greatest things that I really felt was like a hit for this were the spells that have the little flavor text mechanics, if you will. Like, for example, you see a pair of goblins. I loved this card because I played a campaign with my brother, and me and my brother can be opposites, and this card is literally opposites. There is charge them and befriend them. I was befriend them, and he was the one who went in and started an encounter, and so I love these cute little little interactions that just they didn't need to be there, right? It could have just been you see a pair of goblins and these 2 effects, but these little bits of flavor made this one of my favorite cards because it made me think of a very specific moment. And I think that's just a reoccurring theme that we're singing in Adventures of Forgotten Realms is those people who do have D&D experience are getting like that shot of serotonin, of dopamine, like reliving these moments in Magic cards. And I think that's probably the highest. Oh my gosh, I love that.
I just received from Hobbs Q, speaking of the goblins.
I love Hobbs. I love Goblin Lore Pod.
Yeah, so I got my Goblin Lore sticker and Goblin token. So that was,
I
was like, oh, I've got
absolutely love
that
it.
accessible. I don't have dice, but I have the.
Only the essentials, right?
Right.
But
Right.
yeah, there's plenty. I think there's also you come to a river, right? And it just goes, normally on a regular Magic card, it probably wouldn't be called you come to a river. I feel like the names are a little bit more D&D infused, but they would be, just a spell and then 2 choices, and just that little bit of chef's kiss flavor, I think really is kind of like a knockout for this set.
Awesome. Rachel, your opinion?
I mean, my favorite cards in this set are the basic lands. Just hands down, like the flavor text on the basic lands that introduces space and sort of remind you that the lands, are a setting and like can create like an aura for your deck, or like it's cool that they start you in a story. So if like you run these in a mono green deck and you're running these forests, you're like, well, this deck takes place, starting in this moment. And that's very cool that it puts a little bit of narrative without a huge lift from the builder necessarily.
Awesome. Michelle?
Yeah, one thing is I also wanted to roll back to Jake's whole thing with the goblins. So something that I think is important to acknowledge is that D&D is not a perfect system with regards to its lore. So one of the things I do with Asians Represent is we actually are reading through Karator, which is the extremely problematic expansion to Dungeons and Dragons. And for a long time, we've had a lot of just sort of assumed, for example, assumed like alignments for certain races within D&D. For example, like half orcs are made only through violence. Goblins are inherently bad and they're just basically cannon fodder. And so what I really enjoy about these cards is that when they give you a decision and the way they're portraying the different races and species in D&D, the D&D universe, is that, you know, we've got different ways of approaching them. You can befriend them, you can attack them. Not only that, but you've also got a whole bunch of other characters that, you know, aren't necessarily just humans, just elves. Like, it's not just Lord of the Rings redux. Like, we've got, you know, cool looking orcs, we've got cool looking dragonborn, so on and so forth.
I was really excited about
yeah,
the
we've got
tiefling
some
creature
yeah
type.
exactly.
Absolutely.
So it's like we've got a very sort of much more complex, interesting, like more accurate understanding of how the world works, I think, within this game. I think is a lot more attuned to what role-playing games are now as opposed to what it was when, like, Gary Gygax first started.
Absolutely. Alan, your thoughts on this?
So something specifically speaking to that, something that I noticed was that they have really explored that specifically within the magic mechanics within color pie breaks. So you see characters or races that you wouldn't specifically, or you wouldn't typically think of as like being Selesnya aligned or whatever it happens to be. And there they are. Like, and this is like very easily, you can see it very easily portrayed with Drizzt and his kind of character and his journey that he goes through and being Selesnya aligned. And I had friends who were like, I don't understand why is he Selesnya? And I was just like, that's like his whole vibe, you know, that's his thing. Like, he worships this specific goddess who is like this ranger kind of goddess, and that's like where all that comes from. So it's something that I think they managed to put in and to kind of help push that flavor. And I don't it's not quite like a new wave or a new idea within D&D, but like it is something that people are paying a lot closer attention to now. And these things that kind of break away from your, like, I don't know, old school vibes or whatever it happens, however you want to look at it. But they managed to capture it very well within kind of like, and it's not like mechanical breaks within the color pie, but it's like alignment or flavor based ones, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and
color
I think
theory.
that's
Yeah.
right. And I think that actually goes to the recent changes that Wizards has made with D&D and not locking races into specific stat bonuses as well, which is a very recent change within the game mechanics as well, showing that you aren't necessarily always evil if you're a specific race, and you aren't locked into a specific color if you're a specific race. Like a drow doesn't necessarily have to be black aligned in Magic, and doesn't necessarily have to be evil in D&D. Right? So I think that goes to show a little bit of those bleeds, flavor wise, role playing wise, and a bit more acceptable as well. So I did want to make sure that we got into some of our favorite cards in the set, and I know that some of us were talking about them, but a few of us missed our favorite cards in the set there as we kind of got off on a little bit of a tangent. But in terms of cards that represent experiences in D&D, besides the branching path cards or the choice cards, these modal cards that we would normally call them, any favorites stand out in the set? Alan, do you have anything? I think clearly Drizzt resonates with you with your experience and the backstory as well.
So I think the whole I think they got like 3 of them in there, 3 of the companions. They got Caddy Bree, Wolfgar, no, 4 of them. Poor Regis, they left Regis out, which is like a very fitting, but also like a total, you know, kick in the crotch for sure. And something that's actually been explored in recent stories, in the recent iterations of the novels, is that his character is like continuously proving himself. But I'm pumped to see all of like most of the companions in the as legendaries in the set. Like, that's amazing. But I'm also like, it's hard not to be disappointed because they're all like, I don't know quite the word for it, but they're all like prestige class or prestige characters at this point who have kind of surpassed your level 20. They've maxed out all their stats. They've gone through a death rebirth cycle. Like, they're they're all kind of like, at least Drizzt is like this Mary Sue character. So and it's not represented in the card. Like the legendary card is like kind of like, oh yeah, it does a thing. As far as lore wise, I was super pumped to see Icing Death, the dragon, and the equipment to see a monster that then gets turned into a very famous equipment within the story was amazing. That's something that I was really, really hyped about. I was disappointed not to see other character-specific legendary weapons. I would have loved to see Aegis Fang, Wolfgar's hammer in there. Since I was a kid, when I first started reading these books, I was just like, my whole brain was exploded by like Wolfgar and his hammer. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. I trained with a giant maul at the USA Shaolin Temple for 7 years just because of this. So like this is like
It's amazing.
I love these characters. I think that there are some that are big whiffs. I'm really mad that the Rust monster doesn't use the card Rust. It should have been the card Rust on a stick. I'm so mad. Like maybe as an ETB, it could do the Rust card, something. I'm so mad about this. That's the big fail for me. That's the big flavor fail, that it doesn't either as a tap ability or an ETB. It should have... what is it? It's counters an activated ability of an artifact. Rust is one of my favorite cards of all time.
Awesome. Michelle, how about you? Favorite card in the set, either from a flavor standpoint or a mechanic standpoint?
Does the commander do the commander decks count, or
Absolutely.
the set part? Okay, so I was watching Loading Ready Run's Draconic Rage deck tech, and I love Rondas. I mean, so as you probably have gathered, like I'm probably IRL. If I were to be a class, I'd probably be wizard, but I secretly like think I maybe could take a level in barbarian. But I came into D&D from basically from like podcasts, kind of like with like the Adventure Zone, NADPod, Dimension 20, and one of the classes that I really love, subclasses is or the just sort of the specialties that you can take within Barbarian is Path of the Ancestral Guardians. And I've always loved this one because it's like, not only am I super angry, but you got my family super angry too, and they're here now. Like they were dead, but they're here now, and we're all angry at you, and we're coming for you. So I thought that the flavor-wise, this hit the nail on the head. Like every time you ping him, like he just pops out another like ancestor. Like I just imagine like we've already seen the tokens, but I like to imagine like his grandma pops out with like frying pan and some knitting needles. Like his grandpa pops out with like a cane or like a walker that's like weaponized. And yeah, I really love seeing that mechanic just or not mechanic, but that a particular subclass like illustrated so beautifully and elegantly within Magic design. It's just, I live for those moments. So just popping out grandmas and grandpas, great grandmas and great grandpas.
Clay, how about you? Favorite card in the set, either from a mechanic or a flavor standpoint?
So I've got two like flavor ones. One from the regular set, which is the Eliwick Tumblestrum. I know nothing about the character. However, I would give limbs for any of the critters in this card art.
That frog is so happy.
Everybody's having a blast. I love this card so much. I want this playmat. Like, I just want to live in the world that this card exists in, right? And then the other one for like also flavor, but like completely the opposite reason, is from the commander is Lorcan, Warlock Collector, which is the 5 black legendary devil. And this is the funniest card in the world to me, because basically anytime an opponent would have a creature go to the graveyard, right, Lorcan can just decide that creature is a warlock and then like bring it to your side, right? So like Wormcoil Engine, warlock. Skew Form, Warlock. Like you can just decide, and like like the more ridiculous the creature, the funnier the idea gets to me, right? Like no matter where you
Warlock,
end up.
Brushwag, come on.
Yeah, exactly.
I just love this like alternate, like when the creature dies before it heads into the graveyard, like it's like in this intermittent universe, like it's in the astral plane, and Lorcan just shows up as like, "Sup, Brushwag, you want to make a deal?"
Yeah,
Wanna come
with
back?
this infernal contract and making these creatures sign.
Would
Like,
you
what
like?
up?
Would you like
Can
to
I
be
interest
truly
you?
almighty?
I swear this
Oh.
isn't about essential oils this time.
Yeah, this isn't an MLM.
Yeah, so that card just cracks me up, and I cannot wait to build that deck. Just to be like, yes, here's my 7 mana mono black deck that just is all about turning all of your creatures into warlocks. I don't know what else it does, but everybody's playing mono warlock.
Oh, fantastic. Jake, how about you? Favorite card, either flavor or mechanically?
We got the Bard class or the Bard subtype. That's all I'm here for. Like, I'm super stoked about that. Y'all do justice to Yisan and errata that. But on a real note, I am excited to see Bard because I am a musician, and it would have been great to see that in Prismari because there were certain musical elements in that last set. I guess they were saving it for this, so I'm really excited to see now how the Bard. I'm waiting for a really cool Bard commander, right? I think the Bard commander right now is Kalain, and I don't know if I'm saying that right or not. If anyone knows the lore, let me know. But she's an artist, like a painter, it seems, which I didn't really get. Didn't understand that one, so maybe a flavor fail on that. Unless she sings while she paints, that might be a thing.
Hey,
But
bards are there are so many different subclasses of bards. There's College of Lore, College of Eloquence, College of Glamour. Like I
Our
say,
bard
you
is
know,
the College of Swords. So
yeah, College of Valor. Like,
you
I
can
should
be
play
so
more
beautiful with a
D&D.
sword that you can be a
Yeah,
bard.
like call it like bards. Like I maintain that, like, if you can inspire someone with something creative, like that's definitely strong bard energy right there.
I love that. No, that's
Yeah.
super cool. And again, as a novice to D&D, like that's something that I never really experienced, or with my little knowledge, what I think a bard is very specific. I think Jaskier from The Witcher, right? And so Dandelion, is that's like the archetypal bard. And so I think that then I guess that is really cool on Kalain as a card. Then flavor win is that it does represent those subclasses right there. And so I'm excited about that, and waiting for Music Tribal. I'll make it happen one day.
Yeah, just a quick plug, like if you're interested in knowing a lot about bards, I actually did an all bard campaign with Loading Ready Run called Queer as Hell, where we just did basically Queer Eye. Like, look at that cast. You can't tell me that Jonathan Van Ness isn't a bard. Like,
I love it.
They're all bards. They go to hell. They get an archdevil his groove back. It's great.
I loved that campaign, by the way.
Oh, thank you so
I just
much.
want to say that was
putting that in my queue.
It was the first one that I watched live, right? Like I like Adventure Zone, and when like Adventure Zone, I caught up on years of content and other ones, but I actually like was able to sit and watch it live on Twitch each episode, and I loved it. So
thank you so much.
Thank you
I
for
really
that.
appreciate that. Thank you. I was like, it's just I had to learn a lot about bards, and it was just a lot of fun. And thank you so much for enjoying what we put out there.
And we've got a link in chat for it if anybody else wants to check it out too.
Also
yep.
on a much less emotional note, the idea of what is your like performance medium of choice? It's sword. Like, is there like college of like I'm picturing other weapons now. Like I went to the College of Club. Oh yeah, like club like thunk. No, like.
I was it's just like Skrillex as a bard. Yeah. and the way he disposes like inspiration is like, wait for it, the beat's going up, the beat's gonna drop.
Wait for the drop.
And then it's just like psychic damage. There's just a noise wave.
Blah, blah, blah.
Very good. Very good.
Fantastic. And Rachel, your favorite card in the set, either flavor or mechanically?
So there's a couple cards that I really liked just as a D&D player. I laughed out loud the first time I saw +2 sword or mace. What is it?
+2 mace.
+2 mace. So good. It's I think it's like a really hilarious thing to make into a magic card, and I also love that it's like messing up the like the back coding
search
of
database.
Yes.
Magic website. Like I think it's really funny that they were like, yeah, but the joke's pretty good.
I hear you, Rachel. Yeah. My partner is a software engineer, and he looked at that and was like, oh, that's going to be
it's really funny, and I love that they were just like, nah, it's worth it. So I liked +2 mace, and I liked check for traps, because that's just a real classic D&D moment, and it feels like the flavor's really right for like a Thoughtseize type effect. To check your opponent's hand and see if there are traps in there and diffuse one of the traps. Like, I think that's just really excellent design on their part. I think my favorite card in the set, or at least the one that I'm really most excited to put into a deck, is Lolth, Spider Queen.
So good.
I did read, I'm not quite as literate as Alan is, but I did read a number of the Drizzt books when I was a kid, and it's cool to see Lolth on a card, and a card that feels very balanced and well designed, but powerful and fun. I just think that they sort of checked all the boxes with this card, and I'm excited to play with it. So
fantastic. Yeah, it is great to see some of these really important characters from the lore get some of these cards like this, and even be represented as planeswalkers, even though they aren't planeswalkers in a traditional Magic lore sense as well. They're just important enough that they get the distinction as planeswalkers in this set. Personally, my favorite is Dark Wanderer or Grim Wanderer, whichever one it is. The tragic backstory, goblin.
Oh, Gloom Stalker. Which, by the way, if you're ever a ranger and you want to be Batman, become a... Grim Wanderer, sorry.
This My one. Bad. Flash, tragic backstory. Cast a spell only if a creature died this turn. I think it's just... as somebody who plays with so many characters that load up their backstories with like, oh, my parents died, I want to be a brooding Batman type. This was just like, oh, God, it's so good. It's so good. But Michelle, sorry, what card were you talking about?
No, sorry. I thought this was the card. My bad. I think there might be another card called Gloom Stalker. I'm not really certain, but I hear you as far as like stuff like this, where it's like, oh yes, there we go, Gloom Stalker. I'm actually very surprised that this is a white card, because basically this is, if you are a ranger and you take on Gloom Stalker, you're Batman. You're visible in the dark. People with dark vision can't see you in the dark. At night, you are basically unstoppable. Like you're Batman.
Yeah,
fantastic.
And,
Go ahead, Clay.
And an interesting thing, like a kind of a tie-in for a different medium. Well, I didn't do like tabletop and stuff. I used to do a lot of writing in like roleplay forums, right? And way back in the day. And that Grim Wanderer type instinct is so strong across, I think, all creative mediums, right? Like you were talking about, oh, I've had so many people try to build this character, and I was sitting there going, you'd be in like a forum with like 10 people all trying to be Batman, and you're like someone.
Your whole party rolls up. It's like, my entire village was killed by orcs.
I mean, it's
my village
like
was
even
also
Disney
killed.
does it. Like me and my girlfriend were just talking about that. Disney, it's like, oh no, a kid, and they're showing the parents in the opening montage. I wonder what's gonna happen.
Well, I mean, it's so prevalent, right? Like they're making Space Jam 2, and the movie, the prompt of the movie is that LeBron James is kidnapped. Why? Yeah. Why do you include something so incredibly terrifying and like real? It's Space Jam. Can we not think of a better reason? Like, he's like, I have to save my son. Like, why is it taken? Why are
I think it's one of the basest motivations for a character though is like a tragedy, some kind of tragedy, some kind of catalyst, inspiring incident. And I think that tragedy is one of the baser instincts to go to. But Alan, you had something to add too.
No, I'm just like thinking about tropes and like having like read fantastic literature for most of my life. Thinking about these tropes and the way so many of these like high fantasy stories and all of them start with like, kid in the village and the village burns down and he goes to live with the kooky guy out in the woods. And I remember reading The Wheel of Time and people saying like, this is a series that is formative. Like this is something that is one of the, like people tout this as one of the great, high fantasy series. And I started it and it's, spoilers, fucking kid, his village burns down and he goes to live with the guy in the woods. And I was like, nope, but I would just stop reading it like 80 pages in. So, but, years later, I picked it up again at a friend's, insistence, and there is more to it than that, but I just had seen so many over and over again stories that start with exactly that. So it is funny to see these tropes come up over and over again. That's just like personal. That's a personal anecdote about it, and like relating to the very specific series. So.
And I love that it's played for laughs in this set, right? Because we have seen it so often.
It's the
because
edgelord
it is so
card. It's the edgelord card.
Right, exactly. Now, Michelle, interesting that you brought up Gloom Stalker here, because Gloom Stalker uses the dungeon mechanic. And I know that we've talked about flavor and we've talked about lore quite a bit, but I want to get into some of the mechanical aspects of this, especially for the format of Commander, the one that we all love. What does everybody think about the dungeon mechanic, venturing into the dungeon here in the set? Jake, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, as far as flavor goes, I'm not feeling it. And that's not a bad thing necessarily. I think I've seen this kind of echoed by a few people, is that it doesn't really feel like going through a dungeon. To me, it's just like extra upside. And I like it, and I think that's totally fine. I think they, dice rolling being introduced into the set was already kind of like a big like this could get really bad, especially because there is a competitive aspect to Magic, in certain formats. So we don't want to put too much on these new mechanics, especially some of the rules that dungeons, because I believe dungeons are considered a card, but not like in a traditional sense. They're not in your sideboard. Do they even go into a zone? Like, do they go into the command zone? Like,
Rachel, you'd be able to talk on this one. Yeah,
they exist in the command zone, which is weird, but they're not a permanent. And I do not believe that. Like, I don't think that they don't enter the battlefield. I think they're closer to emblems than they are, like an actual like a token or something like that.
Right. Yeah. So. From a flavor standpoint, I'm not really feeling it. I think they're kind of neat though, and I think they scale well. We have a lot of cards that on attack you can trigger this, on ETB you can trigger this, and I think you get rewards that are comparable to that action. I would hate for it to be like, oh, this person enters the battlefield and you do this crazy thing in a dungeon, you make 17 treasures and do stuff. But I do like how at the end you do kind of get those potentially game altering effects. Some of them, I mean, like, oh, you just brought up the Lost Mine of Fan Delver, and you draw a card at the end. I don't know. I feel like I want that end to be a little bit bigger, because I think we get to the end of the dungeon, like, oh man, like almost died 4 times. Come on, give me some loot. But but I that's what I think, and maybe Michelle can speak to them.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Yeah. So I actually really love Lost Mine of Fan Delver, because I love how each of these. So I don't mind the dungeon cards, and I think if anything, they're just flavor. I don't think that they're kind of like a win more card, or like they're just sort of. I don't think that they're a game maker or breaker when we're talking about Magic. But what I do enjoy about them is the fact that they are kitty. Sorry. So what I love about them is that Oh, the kitty's so cute. What I do love about them is that I think that they are a fun Magic the Gathering design take on these different adventures, because obviously they're of different levels. The Lost Mine of Fandelver, if anyone's actually ever listened to the Adventure Zone, it is like the starting adventure that you start your level 1 characters out on. And I actually have run this campaign, this module, for several people, and it makes me quite happy, because I'm like, yeah, I remember that, like the Goblin Lair, the mine tunnels, like the storeroom or the fungi cover. Like, yeah, I remember that, and the temple of I
I
remember
didn't
that.
know these were real. Like, so
Oh,
again,
these are real.
showing my ignorance. If you're a D&D player, I bet these are a freaking home run. Like, as an uninitiated, I was like, oh, cool, go to the Goblin Lair. But that kind of gives me more of a thank you for mentioning that. It makes me appreciate them a little bit more, that they took these modules and implemented them in a really cool mechanical way.
Yeah, like Tomb of Annihilation, that's a higher level one. I think that is the highest. I forget if that one or the Mad Mage is the highest, but you can definitely tell that the challenge level of each of these dungeons is absolutely they correlate 1-to-1 with the difficulty of the modules IRL. So I don't know. I really like them. I think they're fun. I think anyone who has played through these with their friends is like, oh yeah, it's a new playette.
It's a nice little scratch to the flavor itch for anybody that's familiar with these modules. Alan, how about you?
So I love these things for a bunch of reasons. One is it's like a super clear port of the last unset mechanic with the, I don't remember what they were, but the cards from the so it's kind of like a clear mechanical port of that, which I think is really cool, that it's that they do use these unsets to then put mechanics into the game. Like, I like seeing that come to fruition. I also like it there was a period where I played a lot of Talisman. I don't know if anybody's familiar with it as a board game. It's like this kind of dungeon crawly board game. You move around the board, you get to the crown, you kill everybody else. It's very base and competitive, but there is like a dungeon explorer kind of vibe to it, which I think is cool, like a step-by-step kind of board game feel. I also like that it kind of, and we'll see, like, as I run into it, like on Arena or in different formats, like how it we'll see if my perspective of them changes, if I'm like, oh my god, I hate these things. But as like creating this set and having this set be its own like kind of standalone game, I think it's a really interesting thing to have. Like, it's a mechanic that's very specific to this set that makes it its own kind of contained experience, which I think is really interesting as well. And the other part of him that really speaks to me is the Spike in me loves that there is a creature that you can abuse them with infinitely, which I think is super, super hysterical. That you can, that you can do something totally broken with them, I think is hysterical.
That resonates with me as a brewer as well.
It's a real Temple Run moment where you're just looping and looping and looping through these games. It's really fun.
Exactly.
Just want to create like a Lara Croft minifig, just like constantly
through. Get a Serac altered with Lara Croft on it.
Ooh.
Yeah. Clay, how about you? How do you feel about dungeons?
So I think that they're really neat. I wish, and I understand why there's not. I wish that there were more. And
all of us nodding right now.
All of us want more dungeons.
And I know that it can, like, the odds of us getting more anytime soon are low, right? And so like that kind of makes me sad. I've been able to play with them on Arena some already, just in limited, and in limited they seem really neat. It's a lot of fun to do. I got to live not the infinite, but I got to do the Azerac Tomb of Annihilation like in limited, where I just like hard cast it 4 straight turns or whatever to get the god. So like that was cool.
Hey, what?
But I wish that there was, like when I originally was like, oh, there's dungeons and stuff, and like seeing the card before I like really understood how it worked. The feeling that I got that I was hoping for was like the Yu-Gi-Oh Labyrinth, where which is like on like the show, right? And then there's the two brothers, and like they have to like navigate. Like I was hoping for a lot more, but obviously you can't do this in a card game. But like with Arena, I was hoping that it would do more to kind of give you the feeling. Like, thank you, Chris, Labyrinth Wall.
Thanks, Chris.
And so like that you. I was
Like the
hoping for more of
screensaver, you want
Like Doom, like Doom as you go through, and
it kind of like that. Like I think that would have been really entertaining. But like I get why we couldn't do that. But the Lost Mines of Fandevo was really cool. Like Michelle said with Adventure Zone.
Yeah.
Oh, the memories.
Never.
Yeah, thanks,
okay, but now
Chris.
Chris, make it move. Oh, wait, don't worry, just make it move.
I'm getting like GoldenEye flashbacks.
Yeah.
Just like
Thank you. No, keep going. There we go.
At that frame rate too. That's how I
Yeah.
remember it.
yeah, no, it's
I
like
was gonna say that's roughly right, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm there. Amazing.
I always love that the walls are like paper thin, like they have
Yeah.
no thickness to them.
Fantastic. And Rachel, apart from being a bit of a headache or a nightmare from the RC and CAG's perspective on dungeons, what's your opinion on them?
I think they're neat. I like them particularly as a limited mechanic. I am the only one here apparently that is very glad there aren't more. There's a ton of text on these. So if you have not thoroughly versed yourself in the dungeons, or you don't know I don't know the Dungeon of the Mad Mage. I don't know what that is. So I have no context for what that is. So you have to read 25 words and do a ton of math to like figure out which one is right for you now. Like it just adds so many game actions and so many things, which is cool. But if you're not like very familiar with the dungeons already, it's a lot. I imagine the pre-release is going to be a little overwhelming, particularly just with everybody being like, hang on one sec. I have to read 3 cards with 12 rooms on them.
Well, also quite a few people probably playing their first pre-release in person again, right? Like
exactly.
As people try to reacclimate to playing Magic in person, then also you're creating this, it affects the game outside of the game, uninteractable, there's no memory, right? Like when we get new cards, a lot of times if it's equipment or if it's enchantments or whatever, right? Like we know how that card type works. So there's less processing power versus like when the sagas first came out, I remembered having to like really, like it took a while for me to parse like exactly how that worked and get used to that play experience.
The classes are going to be the same way, right? With 3 unique abilities that unlock at different portions. There's a lot to read on there, and there's a lot to remember at what stage you're at, too.
I got slapped up by the mono white class today. It was bad.
Classes are very powerful.
That cleric class is going to definitely give people some headaches in terms of monitoring the life gain. Like as like, oh, it's not 1 life, it's 2 life, or it's not 2 life, it's 3 life, as like they're doing everything else. And then like also, oh hey, I gained life, I was supposed to put a 1/1 counter, or I was supposed to do this thing. Like that it's gonna be a pain in person.
There's a lot of triggers in this set. Which is actually somewhat, I guess, in flavor for D&D, which is like
right. Keep track of your abilities because the DM's not going to do it for you.
Yeah.
I like all the flavor stuff that they are doing, but I do think that this set is particularly ambitious mechanically. And
agree.
I don't know if the payoffs are there for everyone. They're there for people who like play D&D and recognize this stuff and are like, ah, cool, it's that. But if you're not familiar with D&D and you're like, okay, so I have to do dungeons, I have to do classes, and then also there's oh god, there was something else I was just thinking of that's like weird. Like the dice aren't spin downs, and like there's just a lot of like different things that they did for D&D reasons, but you're just like, I don't know why any of this is happening to me. So
There's phasing.
Yeah.
Oh god,
Yeah.
there's phasing, right?
On like one
phasing.
card, right? Or
there's
like
just sort of a bunch
like
of
2 or 3.
bizarre stuff going on in this set that I think is we're gonna see how this pre-release goes.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna be judging this, so I'm like, oof.
Also dice rolling. That's like the other
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
It's like
Yeah,
it's just-
exactly.
there's a lot going on.
I mean, even on Arena, I had anxiety the first time those dungeons came up because I got a timer and I was like, oh crap, I have to read all of these and figure out which one I need
Well,
right now or I'm
and
going to
they're,
time
like,
out.
Closed, so you have to open them all and then you have to read them all, and you're like, why are
Right.
you closed?
It was, I like had an anxiety attack on stream. I was like, chat, oh my God, we're going to lose this turn because I can't read fast enough and I'm getting all worked up. It was a moment for sure.
For real. Clay,
Be
something
Same
patient.
that
thing, I was like,
pre-release.
if I click on this, am I just gonna join this one? And I was like, no, it turned it over.
Right.
Like, is this a memory game? What is that?
Gotta match them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I'm a little bit sad that they didn't do like more of like a class like signposty thing for draft. Like instead of maybe having, because in the past we've had like tribal and whatnot, and like if you go into blue, black, or fairies or whatever. I would have really loved to have done, I guess maybe like more of like when you do a character creation thing for D&D, like when you're sitting down and you're drafting a set with other people, like I'm in bard or I'm in cleric, and like that's your class and you've got like bonuses for that. But I think we already did that, I think, with Zendikar, so I'm a little sad we kind of like we spoiled that a little early. I would have been really happy to have seen that a little bit more prominently in this set.
Yeah, I think I'm the only one that's disappointed that we can't start with the class cards as a companion or in the command zone, because I think that would just be fantastic from a flavor standpoint. Like I want my Omnath Locus of Rage to be a bard, right?
So-
like, can't I do that?
Oh, that's
No,
so
because it's
cool.
busted. No, I'm just
It's
kidding.
also
No, you're
incredibly
right.
powerful, and they
You're
can't
right.
allow that at all. But,
Right.
Aw, cool.
Right,
Just imagining
exactly.
like heavy power metal like Omnath.
Yeah, well, exactly. He's got 4 arms. Come on, like, let's let him shred.
So 2 arms are on the base, 2 arms are electric guitar. Love
Each
it.
arm is on a double base, and they're like...
So something I was thinking about right now is like the way that they did classes. It's you, the planeswalker, are taking the class, right?
Mhm.
So it's not like your creature, which is a little sad for me from a story angle, because like I'm not
Yeah.
good at like singing. So. But it's very funny to be like put an aura on something and be like, it's a warlock brushwag, like that's
Right.
that would be funny.
Yeah.
So
Or like, this is my Liliana deck, and she's a warlock, right? And there's the warlock class that you start with when you build, like something like that would just be fun from a flavor standpoint, in my opinion, at least. But I'm a rogue
I just mean
brewer,
like
so.
auras. I think are a cool way to
Right.
do it, because then now you're specifically assigning it to like the creatures you control. Anyway, but I guess I didn't realize that it's like you're taking the class.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah. I'm personally taking a level in Warlock. I wonder what kind of pact I've made, right?
Yeah.
Depends on which god or fairy you've made it with, which is always fun.
Right.
I was
Yeah.
a warlock rogue in limited the other day, and it was good.
Those are two
sounds like you went 7-0.
Multi-classing. Yeah.
It was really good.
in D&D. That's actually a really good combination too.
Yeah,
Like
Yeah. Awesome. Clay, did you have something to add before we move on to our next question?
I did. So one thing I'm now dying about the idea of a commander deck that's got 2 partners, a companion, and then a class, right? So you're
Right?
like that would be so. That would
it's
be,
just a tiny D&D party, just like
Oh, I want it. I want it
would-
so
that
bad.
would be like bad and great. But then the other thing I was gonna kind of go back to what Rachel was talking about, in that this set feels really interesting in that it's so ambitious mechanically,
no.
but it's not. It feels very safe power wise. Like obviously we will see as like people get their hands on these cards and get to like bring them into standard and modern, and we're going to see if we get another ban before we actually get our hands on the cards. But like until we get a chance to play with these cards, just looking at them, you don't get the feeling that a lot of the post fire sets have had, right? Where there's cards that come out and like Professor Onyx gets previewed, right? And somebody goes, oh well, was that Chain of Smog? Chain of Vapor, whatever. What's the
Chain of Smog.
Yeah, Chain of Smog, right? And so all of a sudden, like day 1, 30 minutes in, somebody has realized how to like just go infinite, right? And then like and we've all been living in an L train standard. So like we've seen where these more power ambitious sets have been and where they've lived. And so to have this like in place of a core set, having like we're gonna do all of these mechanical stuff, but like at the end of the day, it doesn't feel like we're going to break magic while we're doing it, which I think that's contributed to some of the disappointment that people have had as far as like these iconic characters or items or things that they've known and used in D&D or they've read in the novels, right? Like those not living up to what they're expecting in Magic, but like if they lived up to what like proportionally, right, we would be just breaking the game again. So like how they walk that line is really interesting, of giving us like, hey, like these are good on rate cards that have effects.
Yeah.
Heck yeah. Like
Alan, your opinion on that?
Well, I think that like the balance is good. I to speak to kind of the point that everybody's been making about like it's appeasing a very specific player. It's appeasing a very specific person, and infuriating a very specific person, which I think is really, really funny. Because I've seen both sides of that over and over again. And for me, like I've been looking at this set like it's an absolute banger, like a success. And it's, you know, the cards like power wise, like, right, I don't see like 4, 5, 6 staples for cEDH or whatever it happens to be. And I'm not mad about it because I see 4, 5, 6 cards that I've known about the characters for 25 years. And now they're on the battlefield. Now I can actually play with them, which is like mind-boggling to me. But for me, I've been looking at the whole thing like something I said a while back, like a week or two ago, is that I think it was Adam from Casually Competitive, Sliverboy. I've been playing a lot with him. And he said that this set made him nostalgic for the books that he read when he was a kid. And it made him nostalgic for his dad coming home from role-playing sessions and telling him about his character and the things his character did. And for a set to evoke an empathetic and emotional response from somebody is so huge. And for it to evoke those responses from players, not because of what they're experiencing in game, but because of how it's pulling aspects of their life into the game, into the playing experience. This set is an absolute smash hit. The fact that it's been able to affect people on a personal level.
Absolutely. And I think that we covered some of the same stuff with the Strixhaven set as well, with how kind of grounded, or at least partially grounded, that set is in the kind of experience that so many people had with schooling and education as
Um,
well. So lately, I think that there are some real personally resonating settings and items and cards coming up in the game here. The next question, we do have to move along because we are about 30 minutes in. Sorry, Alan, I'll let you add your last bit here.
The one thing I did want to say was, to Michelle's point, it was a bit of a whiff, is that we didn't see more. I really thought that the party mechanic from Zendikar was going to be a major player in this set, and it was going to like expand on that. And I feel like they did do like classes and that sort of thing, but I think it was like I think as far as flavor wise, it was like, I see how it kind of differentiates, but I think there's definitely like a missed opportunity there for sure, to have like, when you have your 4-person party together, like cool things happen, cool effects, whatever it is, you go through the dungeon faster. I don't know, but I think that like there's missed opportunity there for sure. But that's just something that you brought up that it reminded me of, that like, oh wait, yeah, we never really did see that. Like I was really expecting it.
Now, and that's interesting because the chances of us revisiting Dungeons and Dragons as a concept for a set is pretty high, because these are both Wizards properties. I mean, this is essentially a cross promotion bid between Dungeons and Dragons and Magic, much like the Magic modules for Dungeons and Dragons have. So my next question that I want to pose to everybody before we get into Q&A, so I do want to remind the audience to get your questions ready. I want to ask, do you think that this is going to successfully bring Dungeons and Dragons players to Magic? Or is it going to have Magic players explore Dungeons and Dragons? Is it successful in getting players of each player base interested in the other system? Rachel, what do you think?
I think this speaks to Alan's point, where I'm not sure if it's going to get people to do it anew, like to have. You know what? I said that, and that's not even true. All right, so it's not even true. I was like, I don't think it's going to get people there, and then my DM told us last week that when this set was released, it made them want to learn to play Magic. Like, it's just straight up. They were like, every time a new card comes out, I just want to learn what it does. Like I want to experience it. So, I think it'll absolutely work. But also Alan mentioned specifically that like this set makes his friend want to go back to D&D and revisit the, books that he loved. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Jake, your thoughts?
Yeah. I think it's going to get a lot of, and I think I've seen this on the internet, specifically Twitter, a lot of people who used to play Dungeons and Dragons Magic players that used to play Dungeons and Dragons or have dabbled in it. It has reignited a spark to do that. And it's kind of a perfect game post-COVID, right? Think about it. You can control the people that you're with. It's something you can do at home. It's something, you can kind of control the environment. I know different people have different levels of comfort when it comes to how they, interact with other people. You can get that nice vaxxed up party together, go over to your friend's house and spend hours together. And what a beautiful way to reconnect after or during, as we work through COVID-19, and to escape some of the realities that we're facing, go into this fantasy world where we can be these things that we want to be. And so I think it is definitely 100% been successful as getting in, former players back into it. I can't necessarily speak to the new players. I think it will, if I had to, conjecture here. I think it will definitely get Magic players into Dungeons and Dragons. It's definitely got me excited to maybe get a campaign going again.
Fantastic. Clay.
So I actually literally yesterday was having a conversation with D&D players who dabbled in Magic at one point, who brought up specifically Magic, because they had seen the commercials for this set and were blown away by the fact that Magic was doing a D&D set, but we're also like we're starting to see more of, right, like as Wizards is doing more and more advertising for people who maybe were once in the game or whatever. Like in their example, they were very excited to talk about the Stormtide Leviathan deck that they had built, and like that was the monster in their playgroup, which is like really fun, but like gives you a really good idea of like right when they were playing Magic and this and that. But that they were watching TV and saw a Wizards D&D Magic commercial with Patton Oswalt, and they're going, you know, like for them that's wild, you know, that's going to bring people in. I think just it by its nature, but I've actively talked to people from the D&D side that are wanting to get back into Magic. Some of them against their will, going. I remember how expensive and time-consuming Magic is, but I saw the Monster Manual alternate art treatment that some of these cards are getting, and I guess I'm ordering Magic cards and going to start playing Magic again. You know, and then on the flip side, I've never played D&D, but I've had two offers in the last 72 hours to start up a campaign through people.
You love to see it.
And then
Awesome.
that's going to become a thing that I'm going to get to do. And a lot of that impetus is this. Like, I wanted to do that, but it's always hard, right? There's so much else going on, and seeing this stuff and seeing all of the passion and everything that everyone else engages with this game, I want to be there too. And also I need another hobby.
If
Awesome.
I could, just because you mentioned this point about the advertising and whatnot, I would almost go to say that I feel that D&D is almost more culturally like in the pop culture mindset and almost accepted in the mainstream than Magic. And I'm thinking back on like a big D&D influenced show, being now I can't think of the name. It's super famous. It's got 11 in it. Someone
Stranger
help me out.
Things.
Stranger
Yes.
Things. Thank you. I wasn't my show, but it had these heavy D&D things. There's always the joke of the D&D episode in like different sitcoms and shows. Community did one. All kinds of animated stuff. So I think D&D Wizards can even kind of use that as a way to get people into Magic, because there was never a community Magic episode, and so
That's in the movie.
Right, it'll be in the movie. Exactly, 6 seasons and a movie. Am I right? But I think it's an awesome way to kind of connect nerd geek culture and to get all of those things intermingling.
Yeah, I mean, we also get to see, right, like we've talked about the Adventure Zone and D20 and Critical Role, and there are like now this number of media properties, right, that are out there getting thousands and thousands of listeners and people tuning in every week to watch this. And like, how many people have started to engage with tabletop because, and especially during COVID, right, like how many people didn't have anything to do, and so they start listening to the McElroys or Matt Mercer, like these people that write at Queer as Hell, they go through Loading Ready. No, I'm saying, but like going through Loading Ready Run, like on all levels, you have these content creators, and this is it's a game that you can jump into, whether it's through a one shot or a pre-designed campaign or something that you or your friend designs from the bottom up, and I think that blending the properties is a really good idea from Wizards' perspective.
Mm-hmm. Rachel, to add to that?
Yeah, I think it mostly got covered, but yeah, I think this will work. I know it worked for me because I got into D&D when they created the Ravnica D&D books. So my first campaign was in Ravnica. I have played the Theros campaign, and I will play the Magic set. So.
Awesome.
They're doing marketing right, for sure.
Right. Alan, I know that you said that your friend was diving back into the books again, thanks to the inspiration here. But do you think it's going to work in pulling D&D players into Magic or Magic players to D&D?
Yeah, so like at first I was thinking about it and I was like, well, I don't really know. Like, I don't see where the where the drive comes from, right? But it comes from within. So like I realized like I've been working on making a battle box to play with my brother-in-law and his role-playing group because they know about the set. And I was like, hey, I'm going to introduce you guys to Commander. We're going to get a game going. And then on the other side of it, like just like Clay had said, like I've had people hit me up after talking about, you know, my connection with these books and be like, why are you not running a campaign with me? Like, why are we not playing? Why are we not doing a session every once in a while? So I think there's absolutely going to be draw, and it's going to be, from what I'm seeing, it's going to be people who are already immersed in one saying, you who is doing the other thing, come join me, do this thing with me. And I'm sure there will be interest. Like confession time, I did not know those ads were running on television. In TV, like I had no idea. I thought those were like internet specific.
I don't have television. I also didn't know.
So that's crazy that those are on TV. And while we're at confession time, I've not actually played D&D as tabletop role playing. I played a Pathfinder session. Which was a total blast. Second edition or first edition? I don't know. It was 7 years ago. It was a
first edition.
Ago. It was awesome though. I had a total blast. Really specifically because the whole rule book is all full of Wayne Reynolds art. So I was like, every time I looked at any of it, I was bugging out about the art. So but yeah, I think there's definitely going to be crossover. There's going to be people pulling their friends in from one game to play another for sure.
Absolutely. Michelle, you think you're going to get any D&D players into Magic with this?
I think so. I think that, like everyone said, I think people who are aware of the other franchise or property will definitely be intrigued and will at least try it out. I think that a lot of folks who already play D&D, at least according to a lot of like in my sphere, like are generally also into Magic. So the crossover event has happened, I suppose. Like Marvel and DC have already done like the crossing with streams. But I am really excited to see like Magic using this as a platform, like Jake and Clay said, to basically gain a little bit more prominence. Critical Role, I think, has been the biggest thing to hit the TTRPG world in a decade. Like, it has created this whole new renaissance of attention towards RPG games, and I think that the movements we're seeing nowadays, especially with things like Session Zero, Kids on Bikes, these other, even with the new release of Pathfinder 2nd Edition, that's because there's renewed interest, and I think that it's so smart of Magic to kind of glom onto that. And I think that they exist in a very symbiotic state. I think that they scratch different itches. Magic the Gathering, as we said before, is very competitive, and you know, RPG games, we need to make sure that there isn't a total TPK. So,
the competitive versus collaborative aspects of them, that and the mechanical versus the flavorful, right? And you can have flavor in Magic the Gathering, but it's still a mechanical game at the end of the day. And you can have the story and the flavor in Dungeons and Dragons with just mechanics running underneath it, right? So I think that they appeal to different aspects of the player base. And I think that if you're looking for one thing and it runs that through line, you're going to be in love with both Dungeons and Dragons and Magic. And this is a great way to get chocolate in your peanut butter. All right. So
I need dessert now.
You did.
Now, just remembering that episode of like the Great British Bake Off when like Paul Hollywood's like, peanut butter and my chocolate. What is this? So American.
So we are in our last 15 minutes here, everybody. We're going to be doing our draw after our Q&A. Are we queued up with any questions right now? I'm not sure if I've seen any go through chat, but let's hit our panel with some questions, and then we'll do our draws for all of the fantastic people that donated to Child's Play tonight. All right, here's one from our friend Joel. Were there any faces, names, or spells you wanted to see in the set but weren't there? And Alan, absolutely, I want to start with you. I know that you mentioned a little bit of this earlier.
I mean, for sure. As far as I wanted to see more legendary equipments, more character specific legendary equipments. Aegis Fang and Tolmaril would have been rad to see in there, especially because they made Catti-Brie an equipment based character. And then Jarlaxle. They're just big mad that there's no Jarlaxle. That's just like, yeah, it's big. They got the portable hole in there. They whiffed on Jarlaxle, like it kills me. So, so those are two specifics that I would have loved to see. As far as spells and abilities and all that, like they're like, was there a magic missile? Did I miss it? I don't.
Yes,
think
there was
was.
magic missile.
Yes, there was. It was in there.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
No
But there's no
Fireball,
Eldritch
though.
Blast, and that
There was.
made me big mad. I wanted an Eldritch Blast.
I wanted that so bad.
Right. Absolutely.
So that's where my head's at for sure.
Fantastic.
And Regis, right? Big F for Regis.
Anybody else
Fireball
want?
thing.
There we go.
These are from
Anybody
my
else?
campaign right there. We were doing the Ravnica campaign, so I wanted to cross the magic there. So I put my spells on the little Zendikar proxy cards.
Aw.
That was a little
Nice.
my little.
That's adorable.
Just want to show them off.
Anyone else with something that you wish we saw in the set but didn't?
I would like to once again, my fellow Americans and non-Americans, I would like to put forth my petition for Tensor's Floating Disc. It is one of my favorite spells as a wizard who likes to play wizards. And look, it's not just a great place for you to dump your loot. It's also, you can raise it 10 feet off the ground. You can like use it as a platform. If you've got an injured party member, you can use it to get that party member out of the dungeon and into safety. It's just a fantastic utility spell. That and mending. Again, I'm just like very miffed that like all of these signature spells, like mending, Tensor's Floating Disc, as well as like detect magic and stuff like that. Like that just didn't happen. Like I'm like,
Yeah.
the first thing you do is you detect magic. You go into a dungeon.
Awesome. All right. Next question up. Is there another IP that you would like to see Magic cross over with to draw in new players?
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's a spicy question.
Yes, but they're already doing it because I'm gonna like lose my everything when Lord of the Rings hits. I'm so stoked for it, like and I think we're gonna see lots of stuff like that. Wizards already shown their interest. I know Lord of the Rings is announced. Wasn't there another? Warhammer is the other one. Lord of the Rings was the one that it truly got me. I was like, okay, like Warhammer, like hobby gaming, D&D hobby gaming. Lord of the Rings, I was like, what? I am absolutely here for it. I know it's polarizing, but I'm gonna cry when I can somehow equip like Frodo to Sam and like carry it up the mountain. Like I'm getting emotional thinking about it.
I mean,
it
it's
means a lot
carrying
to
the kind of
me.
ring, Mr. Frodo, but I can carry you.
Seriously makes me tear up every time. The love between those men is incredible. So I mean that's me, and it's gonna happen. So I'm happy.
Awesome. Anybody else with any picks for an IP, Alan?
I mean, since the very first, the very first iteration of any IP crossover they did, I've been cracking jokes about an all vehicles Star Wars set. I think it needs to happen.
Yes.
Only vehicles, Star Wars, but only the vehicles.
Well, what about pilots?
How do you crew them?
Just only vehicles. It doesn't
Admiral
matter. It can be
Akbar,
supplemental.
man.
Only vehicles.
So to piggyback off of Alan, like I know I've been talking about Tamora Pierce and her whole Tortal series, which is a fantastic. I mean, like I could just sit me down, design that set. Thank you, Rachel. I feel very seen right now. Thank you. Just like Alana as like a red white like legendary creature, like
Oh my
Faithful as a companion, like a blue companion cat. Like anyway, we should sit down and talk. But speaking of vehicles, I'm just saying Secret Lair Fast and Furious edition. We know Vin Diesel plays D&D. We just call it the family set. We're done.
Yes.
Like we're done.
Oh, yeah.
Paul Walker.
The
Family
meme
is
full
magic.
circle.
Family is magic. It's the Toretto edition.
They have already done it, but I need them to complete the pony list. My pony deck, please.
Give me that Applejack.
I would like them to complete so I can activate this godforsaken activated ability. Just give me a secret lair. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, but like every time they print a new pony, if it's even a remotely playable, I lose my shit. So I'm excited. That's my favorite card. My true favorite card in the set is Phantom Steed.
There we go.
Because it's a playable horse.
Excellent. All right. Next question up. If
sorry.
you could change. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Clay.
Real quick, so I wanted to echo the Turtle need. I would love to echo that. Not only Alana, but then also the Squire little
Kaladri, Dain, and Ali. Ali is a rogue lord. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, there's so much you could do there between all of those books. The other one would be, for my personal, like my childhood and everything, would be Redwall. I feel like the Redwall series fits perfectly within the Magic verse.
The return of food tokens.
Like
Okay.
the return of food tokens.
Can we get a second Lutri? But this time it's Lutri that we can play in Commander.
That
would be great.
So like Lutri the Tagarong, you already have like your legendary lands, right? Salamandastron, Redwall, the Abbey. Like you have these places that are already set. You have legendaries, right? There's hundreds of named creatures across different colors, across different classes, across different types. Like there's weapons. You've already have named weapons. Like everything aesthetically about Redwall works for a Magic set, and I would, if we got the like alternate art Godzilla treatment, right, for like Redwall skins, I would all of my money. I would fill a binder with these, and that's all. Like I would be done with Magic.
Just let me be that.
Just Redwall.
Charging Badger gets reprinted.
Yes, but it's Lord Sunstripe, and
yes!
like that would be the coolest. It's
awesome.
Thank you for going with me.
Next up, and we are running a little short on time, so I just want to make sure that we get to a few of these. We do have a couple more questions. If you could change something about the set to either make it more or less of a crossover, what direction would you go?
More.
I think it's fine. Love it. Leave it. That's me.
Rachel, you'd want to go harder on it?
Probably. I mean, I like what they did with it. I think it's, if anything, it's a little bit too much. I think if you don't know what's going on with D&D, you do not know what's going on in this set. But I love it because I do. So.
They should have made the tokens miniatures instead of cards.
Yes.
That would be great. What do you think of the showcase art and the module lands art? So these alt arts printings here, do they scratch the member berries like they do for me?
This is my hot take. I think the lands are really ugly. I appreciate that people love them, and I appreciate that they bring back a sense of nostalgia, and I will never tweet it, but they're not for me.
It's okay, we clipped it.
Yeah, there you go. Put it out on the internet.
Awesome.
They're horrifying from a design standpoint.
From a graphic design standpoint, there's far too much to parse on them. I agree.
It is the most. What are you talking about? This is the pinnacle of like late 70s, early 80s graphic text design.
Which makes it
How
too
could you
bad.
not?
Very
How could you not?
amateur.
We have come a long way since then, is the thing.
Yes, we discovered Comic Sans.
I'm an absolute sucker for like mass market trade paperback, like sci-fi pulp, fantasy pulp stuff. So like all your old, Burroughs books and your Michael Moorcock and all that sort of stuff. So, and I see the like obvious clear reference that this is. I would have liked to see stuff maybe outside of the D&D set done in this style, like just to expand on these, to maybe have like they've done with your signature spells or whatever, the Strixhaven
the Mystical Archive.
the archives cards, right? So like more lands done in this style, just something to expand on it so that there's more than just a couple. This does hit.
I think they're cute in the same way that I like doll houses and looking at miniature things on YouTube. Like I look at this and I want to like make it into an actual tiny book with an actual tiny adventure.
There you go.
So
fantastic.
I love that they like got the font on there. Like there's a lot of things that I like about these, and I think a big part of it is the art direction in the art itself. It really speaks to me. Like it's got that like heavy Boris Vallejo feel to it, the Frazetta kind of style, everything. I'm a big sucker for. I do see that they are such a wild departure graphically from a Magic card that it does make them hard to parse. There's so much going on that's extra text on them that's like, why does it say dungeon module? Like, what does that have to do with being a Magic card? So like there is extra stuff that makes it more difficult, but as far as like flavor win crossover, I think it's a cool addition. I think it's something rad they put in. As far as the other ones, the like rulebook style ones, I'm less sold on those. They could have, I think they went too minimal on those. They could have put more into it.
Mm-hmm. Great. And last question before we get to our raffle winners and our outros for everybody. Is there a class card that you think could have been better represented? Clay.
I would have liked to see the Bard class card be more on like a goad or a like
Ooh.
or like a goad or like a pump, a buff to another creature like type things versus like cost reduction for legendary is cool. And then like legendary is coming in with other friends, like that's cool, but like we talked earlier about bards can fit into so many different areas, right? There's so many different types and subclasses and niches, and so like I get it from I'm telling a story about a hero style bard, but I think something that directly impacted the board and the creatures on the board would have been a really neat direction to go, just to kind of play into kind of that traditional trope. I'm thinking of and then now I just now realized that probably the biggest D&D influence on my life is Order of the Stick. Having read that for years, thinking directly about that concept.
Yeah. Anybody else? Anything that you would anything else that you would change about any of the classes? Do you think that they accurately represent their contemporaries in D&D?
You don't need to censor your cat's butt. That's okay.
It's gross. It's so close to the camera.
Speaking of animals, I wish that the druid card had wild shape somehow, because one of my other favorite, I'm in like 4 D&D campaigns. One of my other favorite PCs is a druid, and I love just turning into a bear and then just like in awkward social situations, I'm just like, I'm a bear now.
Yeah.
So
I have a player in one of my campaigns that nervous shifts, and it's great. It's one of the best things. So,
yeah.
Fantastic. And I think that is everything for our questions. So why don't we do our draws for our raffle winners? Chris, we've got that going there. So here we go, folks. We have winners for our dice sets. I want to congratulate Hannah, Leo J. Pies, Claybee, and Nick from the Scrap Trawlers. All winners of dice sets. Congratulations, everybody. Are winners of the character journals or Dragon Shield sleeves, your choice of which. We will reach out. Nick from the Scrap Trawlers and Thromo King.
Hell yeah.
Okay. The winners of our dice towers and trays here, we've got once again Nick from the Scrap Trawlers, who donated heavily, as well as Leo J. Pies, another heavy donator here, and our Infinitoken bundle or source book. Choice is yours. Is Nick from the Scrap Trawlers and Hannah. Congratulations.
Gotta donate.
And then our Nick donated over $100.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you
there.
so
Great
much.
stuff.
Very generous. And then our augmented reality pins. No surprise that the Planeswalker bundle goes to Nick from the Scrap Trawlers. Our mana symbols bundle goes to Clay. And our subscription goes to Chris, Thromo King. Congratulations, everybody. We have raised well over $200 tonight. So thank you, everybody, for your generous donations. Thank you for coming out. I want to thank everybody here in our panel as well. And we'll go around one more time for another introduction or an outro from everybody. Let us know who you are and where we can find you. Clay, let's start with you.
So I'm Clay, or Claybee. I'm the CNCPowerHour representative here tonight. We stream Magic the Gathering Wednesday evenings at 8 and Sunday afternoons at 4, both those times Eastern. We primarily do virtual EDH in these weird times, but we also like to do basically if there's a pre-constructed product, we've played it on stream. We like to have a lot of fun and mess around. Otherwise, you can find me on Twitter at MTG_Claybee.
Fantastic. Jake.
Hey, I'm Casual Jake. First off, thank you, CNCPowerHour, for having me. Thank you, Chris, and thank you to all my panelists for being here today. I play Magic on the internet. I'm a full-time teacher, but I make time to make content, and I play EDH on my Twitch channel. Just got into Pauper, so starting to stream that, and then, of course, MTG Arena. So it looks like y'all got the links there. I'm just making all kinds of content. Really, if you look up any social media platform, in particular YouTube, TikTok now, because I'm a Zoomer, and the good old Twitch at @casual_Jake_. I would love to connect with you and talk about Magic.
Fantastic. Alan.
What's up, guys? Ramp Gang Mental Misplay. You can catch me on Twitch. I'm gonna be on there more often, probably during the day. And as long as plans haven't changed, I'm going to be out there with Claybee and Rachel and Rebel tomorrow, getting some Commander, and it's going to be a hell of a ride. So pull up for that, and it's twitch.tv/mental_misplay. And thank you guys for having me. This was absolutely a treat.
Fantastic.
Rachel, I'm so sorry you have to deal with me twice in 2 nights in a row.
It's gonna be great. I'm excited.
Awesome. Michelle.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me on. This was a real pleasure. I love talking about 2 of my favorite hobbies. You can find me on Twitter at KilnFiendPotter. Kilnfiend, like the Popper staple. I thought that was clever for some reason. And you can also find me on Instagram, KilnFiendPottery. And you can find me you can find my work on kilnfiendpottery.com if you're interested in looking at any of my wares. But yeah, if you want to see what I'm up to, Twitter is definitely, aka the bad bird site, is the way to go in order to check out what I'm up to and see pictures of my cats.
Fantastic. Rachel.
Yeah. You guys probably know me from Rachel Reeks on Twitter, or I'm a member of the Commander Advisory group. but I also co-host a Comedy Commander podcast called The Commander Sphere with my co-host Dan Sheehan. So you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Command Sphere. Since we're talking D&D, I do play live D&D with a group of comedians every Monday. We play a Spelljammer-inspired game, so it's weird and it's in space and it's dangerous and it's. I play a Kreen. We do have a bard who is College of Swords. His backstory is he is from a bard family, but has always wanted to be a pirate. And we just took over a pirate cove, so exciting things going on for him. But we just started Arc 3, so it's a great time to jump in if you are worried about not knowing what's going on in the story. That's called Better Than Heroes. It's BTHDND on Twitter and Better Than Heroes on Instagram.
Fantastic, fantastic. And as always, folks, I'm Chris, and I'm your Commander Mechanic. I wanted to thank everybody for coming out tonight and joining us for this discussion. I wanted to thank everybody out in the audience as well. And if you missed any of this and want to get caught up on it, the VOD will be up on my YouTube channel. Just find it by searching Commander Mechanic. All right. Thank you, everybody, so very much. Take care, and we'll see you next time.